Support for this podcast comes from Frito-Lay in the 2023 Snack Bracket Championship. The Frito-Lay Snack-It Challenge is underway, and fans are voting on their favorite snacks to crown champion. We're talking about prime-time matchups between the best 64 snacks in the land. Will Ruffles Ridges reign supreme? Can Doritos defend their dynasty? Or will Smart Food use their smarts for a surprise upset? Only you can decide. Get in on all the action for a chance to win up to $1,000 or a year's worth of snacks. Let your snacks be heard. Just go to fritolaysnacket.sbnation.com to vote and enter for a chance to win. No purchase necessary. Sweepstakes ends April 3rd, 2023. Void where prohibited. Year's worth of snacks awarded in the form of 52 coupons, each good for one bag of chips. See official rules at fritolaysnacket.sbnation.com.
Welcome to the Black and Gold Banneret Podcast. Jeff Sharon, Eric Lopez, and Brian Murphy with you here on as we wind down toward fall. Guys, we're recording this a day later than we normally are, and it's because, well, we were, a little busy here and there. We have lives and stuff. I mean, mostly, for the most part, right?
Speak for yourself, Jeff.
Yeah, right. It's a fair point. Eric, you were at the Magic game, seeing the rebirth of the franchise and the return to stardom of Markelle Fultz.
That's right. Playoff Bay fever. Orlando Magic Town is back.
You better buy your tickets now. Murph, you as I'm sure you had. What were you doing? Trying to figure out mathematically like how the Houston Astros could lose their first two at home to Washington.
Exactly right, Jeff. I did not go anywhere this week. Certainly was not anywhere near the UCF campus. I just sat in my room, in my mom's basement, most likely, and just computed numbers.
That's all right. Well, at least you're honest about it. I'm moving actually, not out of town. In fact, I'm only moving a couple miles from where I currently am. But so my life is kind of in like upside down mode. But nonetheless, we're here with you. We thank you for allowing us to join you a day later than usual. We got a lot to talk about. We'll be previewing. Right now, basically, I think an elimination game in the American between UCF and Temple up in Philadelphia, set for Saturday night. UCF coming off the win over ECU in a second half that a lot of people, for some reason, were freaking out about. We also have it was also Basketball Media Day. We Murph and Eric and Jeremy were there. I wasn't because I'm packing stuff, but. I know. How awful!
Look at you, Mr. Fancy Boy. I'm packing stuff.
I know, and they were, and you guys were there taking care of business with the basketball coaches. We'll hear a little bit from Johnny Dawkins and KK Wright as well, and we also have a very special guest. So we're continuing our thanks to Chaz Short for helping us set this up. We're continuing our look at this name and likeness bill that's moving through the Florida legislature. Remember a couple shows ago we had Representative Chip LaMarca on, and this week we have Kionne McGhee. He's the House Minority Leader in the Florida State House. He's from the 117th District down in Miami, and he discusses what he thinks from his side of the aisle on this bill. And they actually were both alongside Governor Ron DeSantis today at a press conference in Tallahassee, discussing this bill. So first things first, let's get to the football. Game number 8, fellas. Here we are, and it's a huge one. It's at Temple, 5-2 and 2-1 in the American against 5-2 and 2-1 in the American. At Lincoln Financial Field, it'll be on ESPN2, 7 p.m. Anish Shroff, Ahmad Brooks will be on the call on TV for ESPN. 7 o'clock kick. Obviously, UCF beat Temple 52-40 in a shootout last year. Temple last won against UCF in 2016, but the Owls in their first year under Rod Carey have shown themselves to be one of the better defenses in the American, fellas, and especially when it comes to red zone. Actually, they're second in the country in red zone defense. Something obviously that UCF has had a problem with, and considering UCF was just coming off a game where they jumped out quick on ECU and then pretty much took the foot off the gas and looked a little wobbly at times in the second half. Well, let's start with that, Murph. Should we look too far? Should we look that much into that with Temple coming up?
With the second half lull, specific? No, not really. I mean, it is discouraging because this is sort of something that UCF tends to do. Certainly, they did it against UConn, and I think just that, and also let's not forget that their worst quarter of the season was that third quarter against Cincinnati, where I think they gained 1 yard offensively, maybe a little more than that. Seriously, though, it was bad.
They were minus 21 yards at one point. I remember that.
Yeah, it was brutal. And again, this is a team that was so good in third quarters last year. It kind of shows you how those kind of stats are kind of fluky. But I think overall, it doesn't really matter. I mean, this is so simplistic. It doesn't matter as long as you win, right? And I think that's the message coming out from Heupel and the players who, they'll say all the right things about wanting to be more aggressive, coming out and needing the same energy that they had in the first half, carry that over past halftime into the second half. But ultimately, you just want to win the game. And I know that is so cliche that people are rolling their eyes into the back of their skulls. But it's kind of true, and that's the way that the Heupel approaches it. He was asked this week if he was disappointed with how his team won the game because of how they prepared how they played in the second half. And he said disappointed would not be a word that I use. And then he stated how hard it is to win in college football. And then certainly UCF knows that firsthand twice this year.
Let's go ahead and hear from Josh Heupel right here. This is from earlier today.
They're physical. They don't beat themselves. They make you earn it. And I think they play three phases of the game well together. And so, for us in all three areas, it's controlling what we control, staying ahead of the chains offensively, defensively, making sure that we're playing with great eye integrity and tackling well in space. And if we do those things, we're going to get a good chance.
So that's Josh Heupel on Thursday, talking with Murph and also previewing a little bit about Temple. Eric, when you look at this matchup, by the way, UCF is a 10.5-point favorite, and that line stayed pretty. It's actually gone up a little bit. Opened at 10, it's up to 10.5. 51% of the money, according to OddsShark, is on UCF. Over under 60.5. I don't know about you, Elo. I was a little surprised. I think that line's a little high because I don't think they're giving this Temple team enough credit. Do you?
Yeah, they are giving them credit. They're giving them credit for getting blown out by SMU and losing to Buffalo. I think that's the problem. That's what they're giving them credit for. And I think it's one of those things where, look, people respect UCF still. And I think the belief is if you believe UCF's going to win, that they're going to go win going away. The issue has been when they lose, it's a tight game. So I think from a betting standpoint I think they want you to pick Temple, and they want you to take Temple here. With the thinking is that if UCF will just kind of pull them, cover the spread if they win this game. But look, I think the bigger concern, Murph, from the game I took from ECU, and I think why people are kind of at the second half and all that stuff is that team got beat up. I mean, they left with a bunch of guys banged up and lost a guy that's not going to be playing for Temple, a starter, and have some guys that, while it looks like the rest of the guys that left the ECU game are going to play, who knows if they're 100% or not, Murph? Yeah,
I will say, so obviously coaches lie. This happens all the time. Coaches lie.
No.
But at least let's take Randy Charlton for an example, right? Randy Charlton, defensive end for UCF, has not played since the Pittsburgh game. And every week for the last 3 weeks, it's been, will Randy play? And Heupel's answer has been somewhere in the range of, we're not sure, we're hoping he does, we haven't made that decision yet. He said categorically this week that he believes that, well, I guess it's not categorical, but it's more convincing than we guess so. He said this week, we believe that he'll be available. He's been very adamant. He was very adamant today when asked about every other player not named Greg McCrae. So basically the likes of Sam Jackson, Cole Schneider, Adrian Killens, Neville Clark. And he said that absolutely every other person who was hurt for that ECU game will play in this game. They were on the field practicing this week. they'll be back. Usually you do not get that kind of openness and sort of open shut answer from Heupel. It's usually more nebulous than that. So I think the fact that he's been that revealing, I'm willing to take him at his word, which of course will then blow up in my face in 48 hours when none of these guys play probably.
Oh man! Wow.
What do we know, by the way, about Greg McCrae, if anything, was it with his injury?
Well, we know it's a knee injury, and we know that when he left the game, he went back to the locker room, and then for most of the second half of that game against ECU, he came back wearing a full leg brace. Basically, I mean, he could walk in it, but basically he had to keep his leg basically straight out at all times. I heard from someone who said it kind of looks similar to what Mackenzie Milton is wearing now. Again, it's not to compare the severity of
panic.
The
Everybody panic! Oh God!
Yeah, no, it's not. But I think they just want to keep that. They want to keep that leg immobilized a little bit, so that they put him in a full brace. For as far as McCrae is concerned, Heupel has only said he will not be available for this week. Do I take any stock in that? And do I jump forward and say, well, that means he'll be available next week? No, I don't. I don't go across that bridge because that's too much assuming. We'll just wait and see. It'll be something that we ask Heupel about every week, and until he gives us a definitive answer, I think we can kind of guess that he will not play. That McCrae will not play. If we hear from Heupel these answers of we think he'll play, or we're not sure he'll play, or we hope he'll play, but we're not sure, or we haven't decided if he'll play or not, that's basically at this point a no.
Is Josh Heupel like a lawyer in another life? He's the master of semantics. It's really amazing.
No, he's a football coach. He's actually not. He is a athletics coach. This is what they all do. Coaches lie.
So in McCrae's place, we're just going to see a little bit more of everybody else, right? I mean, we're going to see a lot more of Benno Thompson. Otis Anderson really carried the load last week, didn't he? I mean, so yeah. What are we going to see now? Because this is a game where it feels like, if you're UCF against Temple, they're 84th I'm looking at the wrong stats. Temple is, in terms of rushing defense, they're 47th. They're 81st in pass yards allowed. So, I mean, they're not bad against the run, but they're not good. Is this one of those games where we're going to possibly see Dylan Gabriel open it up a little bit?
Well, actually, we saw Dylan Gabriel open up a little bit during ECU. I mean, he ran. I believe if you just take his rushes, not his sacks, which count as rushes in college football, that's stupid. If you just take his pure rushes, I believe he ran 5 times for 27 yards against ECU. That yardage total was by far a season high. And I think you just saw more of that that last game, and not because they needed him to run more because McCrae was out, but both Heupel and quarterbacks coach Jeff Lebby have said that they just believe that he's doing that more because Gabriel's getting more comfortable as he goes through this season. Obviously, as a freshman, it's a huge learning curve. Every week is a learning experience. And I think they seem to state that they think he is just becoming more trustworthy in his abilities to do that. And he's trusting himself that when he keeps the ball in those read options, he will not make a mistake. And I think maybe you saw some of that skittishness against Cincinnati. You saw him play more freely against ECU. Granted, 2 completely different defenses, one good, one awful.
Right.
But yeah, I think, you'll see him run, I think, more than he did in Cincinnati, certainly more than he did in Pittsburgh. It's now been a threat. They at least put that on film, that you have to respect it. But in terms of what they do differently with Greg McCrae out, the answer would be more drastic if Adrian Killens was also out as well, but he's not going to be. He nicked up his ankle, but he was back practicing no later than, I think, Wednesday of this week. Otis Anderson with that word, no less. He told us that AK was practicing at near 100% on Wednesday. So
yeah. We got more information from Otis Anderson than we did from anyone on the coaching staff.
I trust Otis Anderson. So if Otis Anderson's telling me that guys are practicing, I'm going to believe that. Yeah, I mean, if you've got Killens and you've got Otis Anderson, and then you sprinkle in Bentavious Thompson, I believe this running game is fine.
Eric, on the other side for Temple, Obviously, Anthony Russo's back, and he's actually having a pretty decent season. Temple right now 37th in the country in pass offense, but man, they have a hard time running the ball, which is actually a little different than what we're used to seeing from Temple. What are you seeing on that matchup, the Temple offense against the UCF defense? Anything that might scare you in particular?
Yeah, I think for starters, they're going to play. Yes, Russo's the starter and the quarterback, but they're going to sprinkle in Todd Centineo, who's kind of been their quarterback they use to run the football and to help the running game, if you will. In fact, he's third on the team in carries and in yards rushing. Not only won like 24 carries, he won. But point is, you got to prepare for two quarterbacks and two different styles. From that standpoint. Now, the rushing game this year, they got, Davis, Ramon Davis, and Jagger Gardner. I don't think they're as good as Armstead was last year, but I tell you, they got three good receivers that can make plays. I mean, Jayden Blue, you got Brandon Mack, and Isaiah Wright. So, I think to me the key in this game is you got to, the defensive line for UCF's got to come out and perform and put some pressure on the Temple quarterbacks, because if not, I think that, as good as the secondary is for UCF, I think this core receivers for Temple, Murph, is pretty good, and they have multiple options. It's not like other teams, Murph, that UCF's played where, hey, they maybe got one option or two you got to watch out for. I mean, Temple, as I mentioned, they got three guys with 38 catches or more on this roster already. So I think the defense here, the defensive line has to play and show up here for the Knights on Saturday here, Murph.
Yeah, and the defensive line was better against ECU. Coming into that game, they had only, I think, 5 sacks in their previous 4 games, and then they had 3 against the Pirates. So you saw some progress there. Shane Burnham, the defensive line coach, wants to see more guys getting home more, not just getting pressures or getting hits, but getting, actual sacks. You saw that a little bit. But also, Holton Ahlers for ECU doesn't really have great pocket awareness, and at least one of the sacks was due to him running around in a clean pocket. And as Sam Darnold would put it, he was seeing ghosts. But I don't know if you get that out of Russo, who I think is he's a more serviceable quarterback than Ahlers is now. Ahlers is more, I think, gifted naturally, but Russo right now is a better player.
Yeah, Russo's really, I think he's really improved, at least from what we initially saw from before. But again, different tests for the UCF defense this week. And UCF again is favored by 10.5. So ESPN 2 is carrying the game 7 p.m. And by the way, the weather report, from what I'm seeing, is quite nice up in Philly. 66 degrees and pretty sunny, actually. So it should be a beautiful day up in Philly, Murph.
It was funny. Josh Heupel got asked, well, I think it was in that audio. I'm sorry, I haven't listened to that audio. That Josh Heupel was asked if he's worried about his players, dealing with the cold, this week. First of all, it's going to be in the 50s. And secondly, it's hard to overlook the hilarity of that question when asked to a guy who grew up in the Dakotas.
Right. It's like, there's no such thing as cold if you're Josh Heupel.
Yeah.
All right.
The weather's going to be fine. Let me ask you this. I know, Murph, you've been concerned about this game. I don't even think I need to ask you, Jeff. You're right. You're panicking in this game. Is that what you're concerned?
I did not pick, at the beginning of the year, I did not pick UCF to lose this game, but let's put it this way. My ears are perked up.
You jumping, Jeff. Well, listen, I'm not too concerned. I think this team, I was there Thursday. I think this team understands the urgency here. Couple things here. I don't think Temple matches up well with UCF. I don't think Lincoln Financial Field is an intimidating place on the road. I think Murph, you would agree there's about at least 3 to 4 things that right now everybody in Philly's more concerned about than Temple football. Number 1 is what the hell is wrong with the Eagles. Number 2 is Ben Simmons going to shoot from the perimeter at any point this season. And number 3 is Joe Girardi going to help get the Phillies into the playoffs. I really don't think that anybody. So I don't expect a raucous crowd in Philly there, and I think the Knights offense will respond. And I think they're due, aren't they, Merv? I just feel like they're due to put a 60-minute game together. Can this team do it? That's really the only question here is can they put it together for 4 quarters? Because if they can, Temple has no shot, but we don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I mean, if anybody's due, I hate that because I don't know what that means and how you can actually, how do you quantify that? I don't know. The fact is they have not performed well on the road. Dylan Gabriel has looked like 2 different quarterbacks, went on the road and then went at home. Granted, when he's been on the road, he has faced good defenses, and now here's another one. I think, when you look at the Temple defense, it has shown some cracks, certainly in the running game in the last couple of weeks, but they're still a pretty formidable opponent at home. And so, what kind of Gabriel we're going to get? Is he going to take care of the ball? Will the UCF offensive line be able to open up enough holes for the running game to be successful? We talked about how the defensive line needs to get home. How about just like special teams, punt return, coverage, both in coverage and return, and then we gotta at least mention penalties. This team, UCF, has been extremely undisciplined for basically all season long, and even though we've been talking about penalties for the last few weeks, it was really a major issue against ECU. Again, a game where those sort of mistakes don't cost you because you're up by so much. But they had, I believe, 11 penalties that were just accepted, not counting the ones that were declined. And like half of those penalties were like offsides or false starts or post-play personal fouls, like just mental stuff after the play or before the play that you shouldn't do. And so that's stuff that they need to keep under control. We've talked about it all week with them. They're saying all the right things about how they're stressing about, staying focused and locked in and all that stuff. But this team needs to show that because let's be honest, this team has not played very disciplined football this year.
Yeah, UCF right now tied for 110th in the country in fewest penalties per game and 108th in fewest penalty yards per game. So out of 130 teams, that's pretty undisciplined. It's one thing that that has kind of gone a little bit awry this year with UCF compared to teams past. I mean, the penalties went up, under Scott Frost too, but you're right, Murph. I think there have been a lot of sort of inexcusable mental error penalties that have really hurt UCF at some really inopportune times. Especially think back to the Pitt game with the personal fouls, which led to them getting back in it. But nonetheless. Of course, they could take care of business against Temple, and then everyone will feel better. By the way, UCF's last road win was the FAU game back on September the 7th. Seems like. By the way,
UCF's last win out of the state of Florida, the ECU game last October. It's been more than a year.
How about that? So.
By the way, you mentioned UCF's penalties, Murph. Look for a lot of flags in this game because Temple has a lot of penalties.
Yeah, Temple's not exactly. Yeah, Temple's not exactly a paragon of discipline here.
Yeah, 8 penalties a game, Murph.
So you're telling me the pace of play for this one may not be spry?
The game might be over on Sunday.
Get the coffee ready, Murph. Get the coffee.
Yes.
We'll buy it. I need a second round.
Like I said, I'm gonna just mainline it, just hook it to my veins.
All right. Well, while Murph is figuring out how to do that with coffee, we're going to take a quick break. And when we return, we're going to talk some basketball. It's Media Day today at UCF for both men's and women's basketball. And we will hear from some coaches and players when we return. This is the Black and Gold Banneret Podcast. We're back after this.
Today's episode is brought to you by Cars.com. With over 2 million vehicles and 50,000 more added every day, Cars.com will match you with the perfect car for you, your budget, your life, your style. And if you're ready to say goodbye to your current car, Cars.com will get you an instant offer to cash it in. Just start by entering your license plate and get matched with a local dealer who will write you the check. So whether you're looking to buy or sell, just go to Cars.com. It's magical.
Welcome back to the Black and Gold Banneret Podcast. Jeff Sharon, Eric Lopez, and Brian Murphy with you here. Make sure you follow us on Twitter, UCF_Banneret, and on Facebook, Facebook.com/Black and Gold Banneret. We are, of course, SB Nation's home for UCF sports. Got lots to talk about, and we're heading to the really busy part of the season because, gentlemen, basketball season is about to get underway. And we had Media Day at UCF for both men's and women's basketball. We talked to coaches and players from both squads. Both of you were there. Jeremy Brenner was there. It was a busy time, but a fun time. But it was also a time to get reacclimated with or get acclimated in some cases, especially with the men's side for the first time with a bunch of guys. But you spoke with a couple players and, of course, head coach Johnny Dawkins. We'll start with the men's side. What is the feeling heading in there? There are so many new guys that I don't know.
That is the feeling.
Yeah. I mean, I know they went overseas. They had the overseas trip, and sometimes that can help with team chemistry. But we're coming down the pike here. It's gonna be basketball time, and is this team gonna spend a lot of the season kind of figuring it out?
Possibly. I mean, don't forget, this is the same team, the same coach, really, in Johnny Dawkins, who even last season with the roster they had was still talking about how this group had not played much together and they still needed time to gel. And again, in some aspect, that was right, because with Taco being hurt so often, BJ breaking his foot, Aubrey missing a year, that group really hadn't played much together, but they still had more general experience than really anybody on this roster, certainly within this program. We've got some seniors who transferred in, but the most experienced guy, quote unquote, in this program is either Colin Smith or Cesar De Jesus, and so you don't have that sort of like senior guys who have been here forever. So yeah, I think the main thing you get out of this today is it's very new. It's a work in progress, but also the stylistic change of really wanting to play faster. And I know this has disturbed people. Well, not disturbed. That's kind of a harsh verb. But it's annoyed people how this team has not lived up to the expectation of running a faster offense. And I think that's understood because they had Taco. But without Taco now, I believe it's going to happen. I believe you're going to see a team that is not going to rank sub 300 in tempo, in adjusted tempo. I believe they are going to be more up and down, a more exciting brand of basketball. Whether it's a successful brand of basketball, again, that's so to be seen later than now. We have no idea, and that's sort of the appeal of this team. This team is sort of like a present. We just don't know what's inside.
Who of the new guys impressed you the most?
I think the expectations for the new guys is Dazon Ingram, transfer from Alabama, grad transfer, played 4 years for the Crimson Tide. He's now going to be the point guard for this team, and he feels like he's been very open talking about his time at Alabama, saying he felt restricted on the court because in the SEC they want you to focus doing one thing. Now, I don't know if I believe that, but he said that Alabama wanted him just to do one thing, focus on doing one thing, mostly for him. In his most recent year, he said it was just slashing into the paint. Well, he says now with UCF that he can be more wide open. He's playing more freely. He's doing more things that he can do. And so that, he's going to be somebody who steps up big time or needs to step up big time because he's going to be running the point for his offense. And then secondly, the Oviedo native Matt Milan from William & Mary, a fantastic shooter, and they need that. Because obviously losing B.J. Taylor and Aubrey Dawkins, they need three-point shooting, and he's going to give it to them in a big way.
How about you, Elo?
Yeah, I agree about Ingram. Ingram really got a lot of really hype and talk there. In fact, we'll hear from Coach Dawkins talk about Ingram as Murph asked him about him in media day, and Murph described him. I'm fascinated by the guards in general. Tony Johnson, a kid I got to talk to. We're going to air that interview in a future special edition of the Banneret where we preview the basketball season. But Tony Johnson, just a freshman, really talented kid, played high school up in Georgia, a very confident young man. We're number one. I think the thing that stands out to me is this is a group that likes each other. I talked to Avery Diggs, the kid there that came over from Southwest Mississippi College, and he was telling me about the bond of this team, and everybody gets along. And I think Coach Dawkins, Murph, really emphasized that a lot about he really strongly believes in a team that's together off the court will benefit them on the court.
Yeah, talking to Avery Diggs, you mentioned it. When I got to talk to him, we talked to him at different times. Avery Diggs, I asked him, why did he choose UCF? And he said because when he was talking to these coaches, Johnny Dawkins and his staff, he felt like they weren't giving him any bull crap. And that's his words. He said, it just felt real to me. I'm like, what do you mean real? Because I felt like they weren't saying any bull crap to me. And I think the players respect that. I heard that from some of the freshmen as well, why they committed here. Because they felt that they were being real and they weren't trying to just to say anything that would please them. That
weren't trying to blow smoke, as they say. You know?
Right. They weren't. Yeah, exactly. So I think that impresses a lot of players. And we heard a lot of that today. And if we want to run that now, here's what we heard from Johnny Dawkins today at UCF Basketball Media Day.
Your excitement level now, I think, less than 2 weeks out from the start of the next season.
Looking forward to it. Really excited about our group. I think they're looking forward to getting started. Playing against each other for most of the summer and now fall. I think that gets old and the guys are ready to start competing against other teams.
When you have this much roster turnover, I know you talk about time you need to gel together. How long do you think that would need to take for this team to really start playing as a cohesive unit?
That's difficult to say as far as months or weeks. Chemistry is something that kind of evolves. Each group is different with regards to that. Some guys get a feel for each other quicker than some other players. And so for us, we're just going to take it day by day. We're going to be patient with that, understanding that it's a process for these guys to learn each other. But, I'm excited because they all seem to, have a good feel from the standpoint of what we want to do. So now it's a function of them just making better connecting plays. But I think that'll come as they continue to work.
One addition, obviously BJ was such a great leader and run the offense. What can we expect to see from the point guard, even the backcourt for that matter?
From the point guard position, I think you'll see a number of guys able to play the position. All will be different. I think we have guys that are good facilitators, really good passers at the position. We have some guys that we can put there that have a more scoring mindset. So it'll depend. Leadership-wise, I think we have some good leaders. Of course, BJ was a terrific leader for us from the standpoint of who he was in our program. But we have some guys that are good leaders. I like Colin Smith. His maturity that he's shown over the course of this past year. He's one of our captains and really been doing a really good job of leading. And he knows what I want because he's been with me for several years now. I think, we have Matt, who you guys have probably met. We made him a captain. And for someone who's been new to our program, that's rare for me to have someone just come in and can assume that mantle. But I think he's been very good because of what he does as far as an everyday player. He comes in every single practice. You know what you're going to get. Before and after practice, a guy that's going to come early, stay late. He's really committed to becoming really good. And that's always a good example to have in leadership. And then we have, a young man that was voted captain for us this year who, for me as a sophomore, I don't think I've ever had a sophomore captain, and Levy. And so Levy's been named one of our captains as well, voted on by his teammates, which says a lot about who he is. So I'm excited about him, and he's been a great leader. He's been vocal. He's been talking, telling guys, things they need to do on the court. So that's been really good for us. So it's been good for us. So I think we got, a number of ways we can go there with regards to our leadership, but all of which I think are positive.
Another one of those point guards, Dazon Ingram, he talked about how he felt restricted with some of the stuff that Bama had him doing before he got here. Has he mentioned that to you, and how have you tried to maybe open his game up and really utilize him the best he can be utilized? Well,
Dazon is a dynamic player. He's a very good facilitator of the basketball. He makes plays, and he makes plays on both ends of the floor. Defensively, he's a really good lockdown defender there as well. And I think everyone has a different style, a different type of system. And I think what we do, definitely lends itself to who he is as a player. I think it allows him to operate with more space on the floor and operate with the ball in his hands a little more, which is something that I think he's very good at. So I think sometimes it's just a function of being in the right system, and I think the system will be something that will benefit him as well as our team.
Is there a situation in your playing career or your coaching career where you had so much turnover, and how can you use those experiences to coach this team?
Never. This is the most turnover I've ever had and been a part of as a player or a coach. But it's just a function of today's game, as you know. I mean, it's changed so drastically over the last decade or so, and you kind of just have to adapt to it. And so what we've done is, we've tried to get to know these young men as best we could. We've tried to do a number of team-building things to try to pull us closer together, because I just still believe the philosophy has to be, the most together teams are usually the most successful ones. So with keeping that in mind, everything we do is trying to bring our guys together, put us in close proximity of each other, working with each other, so that we have a level of trust in what we're doing out there on the court because of the relationships that we are developing. So that's kind of been our philosophy, and we've stuck to that. And I think our guys are getting closer. They're getting to know each other on a deeper level, which I think always aids you when you're on the basketball court.
Dre, bowling every Tuesday night. Have you gone to these bowling games? Have you gone to bowling night?
I've gone to bowling night with them before, but not with this particular group. But yeah, we have gone bowling, but I haven't gone with our group here. But we do get them out to bowl. We get them out to dinner. We've gone to the escape room and things of that nature. Just so you know, where no one escaped either, just so you know. just so that we put our guys, like I said, in positions where we're working together, we're having fun together. And I just believe that's just so important to success, is that, getting to know each other on a deeper level than just, and just passing by or just when we see each other in practice. I think that's important, and our guys have really embraced that, and I think that's helping our overall chemistry. It's helping out, it's helping our continuity.
All right, that was Coach Dawkins from Media Day there with questions from Brian Murphy, myself, and Jeremy Brenner there talking to Coach Dawkins. And Murph, I want to ask you, too, one of the guys you got a chance to talk to, I didn't get a chance to talk to, but you were fascinated by, and that is Alak, and he's not going to play till later in the season. It's just the thing that jumps out at me, Murph, is how are all these pieces are going to be put together and how they mesh once we get them on the court is going to be fascinating to me.
Yeah, I think, some of the freshmen who they even brought out today, they might end up taking a back seat. At this point last year, when Dre Fuller was a freshman, a true freshman, we really thought he was going to have some sort of impact for last year's team. Turned out they were going to redshirt him anyway, so they redshirted him. So I think you'll see some of the freshmen that we talked to today and that we're talking about now may not actually be major contributors, especially when, again, Alak, basically a 7-foot center, transferred in from JUCO when he was the number 1 JUCO player in the country. Previous experience at TCU. When he's available at the end of the fall semester, so somewhere in December, I believe he's going to play significant minutes at some point and thus take away someone else's playing time. But how it all works out, again, I think that's one of the intriguing parts of this team. I understand that the expectations for this team aren't very high. People aren't thinking very highly of them on the outside. But I'm interested just to watch how this team unfolds purely. I think also that piques Coach Dawkins' interest as well, because as a coach, he wants to see all these pieces mesh. I mean, really, at this point, nobody knows much. We haven't seen them play together, really, in a live environment. So yeah. I think that's going to be at least interesting to watch, even though it's going to come with a lot of ups and downs.
Well, they opened the season on November the 9th at home against Prairie View. No exhibition games this year, interestingly enough, but we'll get their first look at that. And then right after that, 3 days later, they play at home against Miami. So big step up in competition there, and we'll have, and that's when we're going to see them under live game conditions, and it might be messy at first, but it should be. You're right. It should be very interesting at the very least.
Well, and we're going to get to see them, Murph, on Saturday morning prior to the Houston game. They're going to have an open scrimmage. Where we're going to attend. I think you and I are going to probably take a peek at check it out. So that's going to be, at least publicly, the first time we get to see them on the court a little bit. I know it's just a scrimmage. But I don't know. I think Coach Dawkins is excited for this challenge, right? It's not like, oh, woe is me. It's kind of like, hey, this is going to be exciting. We're going to put these guys together. And I don't get a sense that he feels like, it's funny. I think someone asked him, Murph, remember they asked him about the defense. Is there going to be, some of the offensive things they're going to do, is that going to be at the expense of the defense? And, of course, no Taco. And he's like, no. He was very adamant. He does not expect a drop-off defensively despite not having a Taco fall.
Yeah, and that's because they feel like they're more versatile. They have more guys who are able to guard more positions. They're more positionless, which can make, you make it more confusing on defense to really scheme against. We'll see if that's borne out. I mean, that could be just coach speak, because I am one to believe that Taco Fall, not breaking any news here, but he was a massive difference maker defensively. Like, you just don't replace that.
Yeah. But, I also see the other side of that where, he Taco giveth and Taco taketh away sometimes on defense. Just like he does on offense too.
In terms of pacing and keeping up with the more athletic bigs, your sort of pick and pop bigs, guys who can stretch the floor. Yeah, I get that. But, you don't see that a ton. You don't see that a lot at this level of the college game. Maybe more so in the ACC or Big Ten, but not much here. And so I don't know. I still think that without Taco, they're going to have a lot of problems stopping a lot of drivers. Teams are going to be more willing to drive on them in the paint. I think the biggest change is not even defensively; it's offensively and allowing them to run up and down the court more.
Right. Yeah. And then who's going to step up and be that rim protector? You're right. Go ahead, Brian or Eric. I'm sorry.
Well, no, and we're not going to get into this as much on this episode because we're going to do a basketball special, so we'll probably dwell into this more. But it sounds to me, Murph, and this will be one of the questions we'll ask during the basketball special we're going to do in the future. Are you more worried about? It sounds like you're more worried about UCF missing Taco than say replacing him than say a BJ or Aubrey.
Yeah, because this team's identity, no matter what anybody wants to say, this team's identity is defense. They are rooted in defense, and you lose basically the most dominant defensive player this university has ever known. That makes a difference. So I see them backtracking in the one department that they really, that they really pride themselves on, and I think that definitely concerns me more than the scoring, because I think the scoring, while maybe there may not be a really go-to guy who's like the BJ Taylor, it's gonna be more spread out. I think they're gonna get their offense either anyway. 8 points here from one guy and 10 points here from another guy. But defensively, I think they're going to be exposed more just because you just do not have the threat of a guy with an 8'2", 8'4" wingspan.
Yeah, I mean and we'll have to see. Does that bear itself out? In the course of maybe that first game against Prairie View. I know that that's the good opportunity to try some things out. But I think that that test against Miami, playing an ACC team, that's going to be a real. And then going on the road at Illinois State right after that too. We're going to find out real quick where UCF stands defensively, at least at the start of the season post Taco Fall. Wasn't just the fellas who got involved. We also had the ladies. UCF women's basketball, of course, coming off their first ever, just like the men, their first ever at-large bid to the NCAA tournament, and they have a lot of new faces. Not quite as many, but still a lot. But one player who does return is the preseason co-player of the year in the conference in her senior year now out of Jones High School, KK Wright. Diamond Battles is back. Masni Kaba's back. Siani Martin's back. But other than that, we have and Brittany Smith as well. But other than that, we have a wide range of new faces on the women's side as well. Eric, you got the chance to talk to, actually both of you guys got the chance to talk to Coach Abe and talk to a few of the players. And but the outlook, on the men's side is, UCF was picked 9th in the conference on the men's side with all the new faces. But UCF, not so low, right?
No, they were picked third in the league, and certainly maybe caught some people off guard, at least there, considering all the people they've lost. But it shows the respect that they have for this program. And the big story, of course, was KK Wright. That's really the headliner, getting the co-player of the year preseason honor in the American Conference in the league where UConn is in. I think that was kind of a surprise, Coach Abe, considering the history. And it to me, that was the big takeaway for me. I've gone to a ton of media days in basketball over the years. Too many to I've lost track. And Murph, you've been to a bunch. Jeff, you've been to a bunch. And we're look. Let's be honest. When they do the men and the women, obviously men get the more attention from some media there and things like that. And people are always like, well, maybe we'll talk to certain players. The thing that blew me away, the most person that was demanded the most here, that got the most attention. There was two, people. I think Colin Smith, but KK Wright by far had a ton of media attention. I think it's awesome. It speaks volumes of the respect that she has gotten to where everybody wants to hear what she has to say, including our very own Brian Murphy, who got a chance to talk to her and talk about What's it like being the player of the year and the expectations as Murph and Jeremy Brenner here talk to KK Wright?
But it was real, and I'm excited. It just goes to show the hard work that I put in, and I'm just so excited, and I'm just excited about the recognition. Years before, I didn't really get that, so now that I'm receiving that, just makes me more hungry, makes me want to go harder, and makes me want to just put it all out there for Knight Nation.
You and Diamond are obviously very close. You're the big reason why she's here, and now you guys will be playing a lot together this year in the backcourt. Talk about your guys' relationship on the floor.
I think it's kind of the big sister, little sister role. Just kind of there for her, able to coach her through, just tell her through the offense, because I've been here before, 4 years. So just knowing the ways to be on the court, the ways of our defense. So just kind of being there for her and just, help molding her as a player.
Season accolades that you're getting, and obviously with it comes more attention. How do you not turn that into maybe pressure you put on yourself to live up to those expectations?
I don't think it's so much pressure. I just think I just have to focus on the games and focus on winning. If you're not winning, you're not going to be getting accolades. If you're not winning, you're not going to be getting any, post-game praise or anything. So I just think we just have to focus on game-by-game situation, and just take it game by game, and it'll be a special year.
Heading into your final season, though, I guess what's the mindset like for you, just personally, knowing that you're heading into your final season? Is it any different than maybe heading into last season or your sophomore year?
I don't think it's any different. I just have to cherish each moment as if it's my last. I just really have to soak in all the moments and, not get caught up in the accolades and, everything that's going on around me. Just have to keep focused and just focus on our team goals and our end goals.
So that's KK Wright, the first non-UConn player to get at least a share of the preseason conference Player of the Year award in the AAC. And it just shows you how much respect that everybody has for her. And again, you heard her, I think, in there. She is really concentrating on one aspect of her game more so. She likes to target an aspect of her game every offseason and improve upon it. And this year it's been 3-point shooting. And Coach Abe said that, in the past she could shoot, but wasn't that accurate. I believe she shot, less than 35% from deep last year. Well, she can hit that shot now. And, she's not going to be hoisting up 10 threes a game. But defenses are going to have to respect her now on the perimeter, which is going to make her tougher to guard. Imagine that. And also open up the offense more and not be so compacted in the paint. So I think, KK's the best player on this team. She's also the hardest worker, as Abe said today. And I think that only makes this team better.
Yeah, she's also placed on the Nancy Lieberman watch list as well for this year as well. So
she's the star. She's the star basketball player on campus, male or female, right now.
And she's certainly the best player we've had on the women's side, man, for a very long time.
Well, we're going to get into that, Jeff. Yeah, we're going to get into that when we do our basketball special. We're going to get into where she, because I think she has a shot to be the best of all time if she can duplicate what she did last year. Well, I know we're going to get into that more, but she's somebody that I don't know that we've had this in women's basketball with the program. I think she could transcend the program as far as there are people that know who KK is. I mean, a lot of the media know who KK is. A lot of it being obviously the fact that she's a local girl. Coach Abe has talked about that. Went to Jones High School, had a great career there. But she's one of the few people that I can't – I mean, Jeff, you've covered it just as long as I have, and Murph, you as well. I don't remember another women's basketball player that you could say that sentence about.
Yeah, I mean, there's certainly more hype around her than I think that has ever been. It used to be –
and rightfully so. Rightfully so.
Yeah, I would say that certain other players they kind of made their way into the local consciousness just based on how the team was playing and also just how good they were with the media at times. But I mean, KK's play speaks for itself, and she's an excellent ambassador of the program and a fiery competitor. I think that's the part that gets overlooked with her, and we'll talk about that a lot more as we get ready for the season with that basketball preview show we're going to have next week. But overall outlook for the women's team right now, and Murph, Murph and Eric, I want to hear from both of you on this. Is that third place finish is, excuse me, quite lofty. And when you look at the schedule, they are playing UConn twice this year, opening up with an 11 a.m. game against Pitt on a Wednesday. What do we think about this? Do they have the at least as of right now, based on how you feel that they're approaching the season, do you see them as above expectations, at expectations, or maybe a chance to go below expectations this year?
Eric, I'll concede to you.
Okay, Murphy. I mean, you were the guy that was, Mr. Women's Hoops there in the media interviews there with Dave, but I appreciate that. Look, I think they could be the second best team in the league. I really do, and I know they lost a lot of departure, but let's talk about Diamond Battles. Sophomore of Winter Haven, Florida, went to Winter Haven.
KK's back up from last year.
And they know each other very well. Murph, I know you've talked to both of them about that, and that was brought up even in the interview. I think, not to give away too much on the basketball schedule, I think this has a chance to be maybe the best backcourt in UCF women's basketball history. I mean, I've heard great things about Diamond, and if you since Coach Abe's been here, there's always been a player that takes it to the next level, the following year, and especially in the guard position. KK took that level after Z Saunders, and I think Diamond's set up to be the next one. And boy, that could be something where I would not be surprised if those are your top two scorers. And I think they're very good offensively. I understand the concern with the departures, and I think there are some legitimate questions about the depth of this team. But another name to keep in mind is one of the captains on this team, Masani Kaba, Jeff, who we've seen. He quietly had a great freshman year, and I think got overshadowed a little bit last year because they had so many bigs last year. I think she's going to be one that's going to take it to the next level because I loved her game as a freshman, Jeffrey, when she had to play more minutes than she was probably planning on playing because they had so many injuries during her freshman year. I think that's a name to keep in mind with this team. So I actually think that this team potentially could be maybe the best offensive team they've had under Coach Abe. And ironically, I just trust her and the staff as far as figuring it out defensively. So I still believe they're the second best team in the league, obviously behind UConn.
Yeah, the good thing is, with their experience coming back with KK, I mean, obviously you have a bona fide scoring threat and leader on the floor with Moss, like you were talking about. Excellent front court player who suffered some injuries last year a little bit, but was able to make her way back. And, like you said, very talented in her freshman year, was kind of a real surprise. The thing that I look at that they have kind of an advantage on is when you look at the roster with all the new people on the roster, the one thing that like you said, offense is something that they should be okay with. So then you're like, okay, well, what do they have to do on defense? The good thing is when you're talking about newcomers, right? Defense is the easiest thing to catch up on if you're new to a system. Defense, new players in a place always figure out defense first, and then offense kind of comes at a time. So if that's the case, and by the way, they have some players who do have some experience out here. Georgia Gale, who came over, she's from Sheffield, England, but came from North Florida State College, JC transfer. Is an experienced player that should get some work as well. You have a couple of other junior transfers as well, like Cortasia Sanders, who came over from Chipola College, Janiyah Walker from Trinity Valley, and then you have a redshirt senior in Grace Stant, who comes over from Villanova, who's a grad transfer who should help out up front as a forward. So there's a lot of talent there. It's just a matter of how they mesh. And if the trick is to get them to play defense, well, then UCF should be actually in pretty good shape going forward. We will have a full basketball preview show next week here on the Black Gold Banneret Podcast. It's going to be fun. We're going to look at both teams. We're hopefully going to have also some special guests to talk about in a little bit. As well next week. So be on the lookout for that, in addition to our regular
Murph was disappointed. I participated in the media basketball game, and he was very disappointed in my jump shot. Rightfully so, I might add.
There was a basketball game today?
Well, no. It was a
media knockout. Media knockout.
It was a knockout. Oh, okay. Well,
Ken Landis, the champ.
Oh, Kenny was it? Okay, okay. Was O'Donnell and Taylor Young there?
No.
Okay, fine. Okay, then it's a perfectly legit contest because those two guys are just ringers, and I don't want to. And I'm glad.
No, but Murph had a problem with Kenny winning it because he's technically media relations. So is he really, media? I mean, Luke, that there was some controversy about it.
I did not have quote unquote a problem. Let's get that out of the way. Did not. Kenny's probably gonna hear this maybe and then come at me. So no, Kenny, totally respect your victory. I just thought it was Kenny's he's in house. He's
see, there you go. No, Kenny, don't let
say I had a problem, just saying that it wasn't the actual media. It was a media conduit.
Kenny, don't let Murph Kenny, if you're listening, don't let Murph take away that give you that shade. It's not going to happen here. Not on our watch. All right. When we get back, special interview. A couple of shows ago, we talked about the bill or one of the bills that's going through the Florida State Legislature on allowing players, college athletes specifically, to get to make money off their name and likeness outside of team activities. That time we actually spoke with Representative Chip LaMarca and Darren Heitner. Representative LaMarca, obviously a Republican. This time we talked with the Florida House Minority Leader, Democrat from South Florida, Kionne McGhee, on his perspective on this bill, and a chance to have some bipartisanship on what is becoming a big issue in college sports. Stick around. The Black and Gold Banneret Podcast is back after this. Welcome back to the Black and Gold Banneret Podcast. Jeff Sharon with you here. And a quick note as I'm about to present our interview with House Minority Leader Kionne McGhee on SB 251, the name and likeness bill that's moving through the Florida legislature. I wanted to apologize just real quick up front for some of the audio quality on my end. I had a little bit of an unforeseen technical issue that I didn't find out until post. So I sound like I'm on a phone call, but Representative McGhee sounds just fine. So I just want to give you guys a little heads up in case you think it sounds squirrely. It's not you, it's me. All right, here's the interview with Florida House Minority Leader Kionne McGhee.
Welcome back to the Black and Gold Banneret Podcast, and we're continuing our look at this NCAA name and likeness issue within the state of Florida. And you'll recall a couple shows ago, we had Representative Chip LaMarca and Darren Heitner on to talk about HB 287, which was the Republican bill that's moving through the Florida legislature. And with the help of Chaz Short, we've also got the guy who's in charge of the Democratic bill that's moving through the Florida legislature. He's a native of Miami, representing the 117th House District, which is down in Miami-Dade. He's done so since 2012. He is also the House Minority Leader in the Florida State Legislature. He's an author, college professor, graduate of the Thurgood Marshall School of Law at Howard University. Kionne McGhee joining us here on the Black and Gold Banneret Podcast. Representative McGhee, thanks for joining us. How are you today?
Hey, I'm great, Jeff. Thank you, man. When you were giving that description about your caller, man, I had to look at myself and say, is that really me or is that somebody else he's talking about?
Well, I appreciate you coming on board, and this is such an interesting issue. You certainly got the chops to sort of shepherd us through it. The bill that you introduced into the legislature on September 30th is HB 251, which, according to the Florida House website, authorizes students participating in intercollegiate athletics to receive specified compensation, provides requirements for specified students, post-secondary educational institutions, certain organizations, and specified representatives, and creates the Florida College System Athlete Name, Image, and Likeness Task Force. So from where you stand as a Democrat in the Florida House, on the other side of the aisle from Representative LaMarca, you guys are both working on the same issue. Why is this legislation a good idea, in your opinion?
Well, let's back up first, and thank you, Jeff. Again, this is one of the best opportunities I've had in a long time to really get with someone who understands this issue very well, such as yourself. But I just want to make it absolutely clear: this is not a Democratic bill, and I do not believe LaMarca is actually pushing for a Republican bill. What we're doing, and we're saying the exact same thing. We're calling for fairness, and when you call for fairness, we don't care whether or not you black, white, Hispanic, Asian, gay, straight. care if you're Republican or Democrat. We simply want what's right for these college athletes. And right now, these college athletes are in a position where they can demand a better reality for themselves and their families when they're actually giving up the better part of 4 entire years of their lifetime in order to make to the tune of $1 billion a year.
The key difference, now I've read both bills, and they're actually, even for a layperson like me, surprisingly readable. The bills are only about 6 or 7 pages long. And the key difference from what I was able to determine is the creation of the task force. What's the purpose of that task force?
Well, look, like everything else, we can't do anything into a vacuum, right? So the reality of it is the task force is to make sure that we have some sort of oversight, to make sure the suggestions those who are actually going to be affected, that they can have a say at the table. Because what we don't want to have is, elected officials just going around rampantly making decisions on behalf of chancellors and the college systems and athletic administrators and athletes, not knowing and not taking into account what they truly want. And right now, that's the best way to have it. I can describe it in 2 words. It's diversity of thought. It's diversity, 3 words, actually, diversity of thought. And that's what's going to make this bill one of the best bills and similar to exactly what California did. Without the diversity in thought, we find ourselves chasing our tail. We find ourselves in a one-man show, and that is not the intent of this bill. The intent of this bill, diversity of thought, that's why we need this task force. But we also need the task force to make sure that this is something that the college presidents and the college athletes, that they understand is going to benefit them in the long run.
We have the text of the bill. I'm going to put it in the show notes, and we're also going to put it on our page on the website so that you can look at it. And again, like I said earlier, shockingly readable for a lay person like me to sort of digest. This looks like we said, a rare opportunity for bipartisanship in the Florida legislature. What is it that you have found is really what brings both of the parties together on this?
Look, this is America. We're talking about democracy, and we're talking about capitalism. And deep down in what capitalism is built upon is the reality that we need a fair market and a free market. In order to understand the free market and the fair market, you first have to give people an opportunity to participate. And once they participate, then you have to give them an opportunity to own what they believe is their rights. And then what we're calling for in this particular instance is if a person has a name, a likeness, or image, and it belongs to him or her, especially if it's a student, then why should you be prohibited from actually participating in the free market? And why should you be prohibited from actually being shunned away by an organization that's making $1 billion off your name? I think it's fundamentally wrong to suggest that we ask these students to participate in an educational system that is premised upon a capitalism belief and tell them that they can no longer participate in it because they've chosen to do what they love, and that is to participate in the sport.
So, I agree with you on that sense too. Like from my perspective, I was never a college athlete, but I knew college athletes and obviously know them from now. And when I was in school, I had the opportunity to, especially in the age of the internet now, I had the ability to. It was a lot easier for me to become an entrepreneur for myself. In fact, the website that this podcast appears on is a good example of that, where if I was a college athlete at the time and I produced this website, I could possibly, I don't know, it would have to get into a little bit of negotiation, but I could possibly, have lost my eligibility if I was making money off of my name, image, or likeness. Now, the key distinction here is that the bill also provides for that name, the use of the name, image, and likeness outside of, from what I understand, are team activities. Is that correct? So if I get my picture if my name, image, or likeness is used in an ad, let's say, then I could be compensated for it. But if it's for, say, the team picture, I couldn't then go to the university and say, hey, where's my cut of that team picture? Is that correct?
Yeah, and so let me just put it in perspective here. Think of this as saying this, and you made a great point about had you been a college athlete at the time of you producing this podcast, you would have been in a position to make a decision whether or not you're going to forego your scholarship or you're going to follow your dream, which is built upon your gifts, right? Because obviously you're a great communicator and you're a great person who the public looks to for information. So we don't have to look that far either, right? We can look at Donald De La Hoya from the University of Central Florida, right? Remember, he was forced to make a decision between his YouTube channel, which has absolutely nothing to do with the NCAA, and his athletic agreement, which was the scholarship. So he had to make a decision on what he just wanted to do. Now, that's a better life should have to be forced to make, which has a detrimental effect on his family and his viability down the road to provide for his future family, i.e. wife and children down the road. So at the end of the day, you're absolutely right. So I'm there with you. As it relates to the name and identity and the likeness and the image, think about the mom and pop stores that are back in your district, back where you live, who simply can look at one of these students and say, oh, my God, I watched Jeff grow up playing football, soccer, softball, and all of a sudden they want you because you have such a huge following because of who you are and your credibility and reputation. And they come to you and they say, Jeff, can you simply look at my store, my fruit stand, and put it on your social media page and talk about the fruits? What's wrong with that, Jeff? Like, there's something fundamentally wrong when a small business, a fruit stand owner, cannot use a kid who grew up in a neighborhood to actually communicate the message on his or her YouTube page and or Instagram and receive some form of compensation. So that's what this bill really goes at the heart of. It's an atrocity. It is a I'm not getting very excited, but it is absolutely wrong to prevent that small business fruit stand owner from having an opportunity to participate in a billion-dollar industry on each and every weekend of the year, while other major organizations can. And so that's why I'm saying this has to be addressed in a way that requires that task force. We need time to iron out the differences and the kinks. That's why we need it into 2023 when everything comes back in, and that's why we have to have a uniform system across the entire nation, which mirrors California. And I think anything that comes before that takes an opportunity to set us back, because it's going to create more chaos and more division amongst an issue of, between an issue that really shouldn't be divided upon about, race or political parties or what you truly believe in or what you don't believe in. This is a black and white issue. It's black and white because there's a contract between the student athlete and the university for a college scholarship. In return, the student produces what he or she does best, that is athletic abilities. And secondly, this bill will look at the party and say to them that, listen, we want to do the right thing. You've had umpteen years to get it right. You haven't gotten it right, and we're going to help you get it right. That's all we're doing.
So let me play a little devil's advocate here. I got a buddy who's Mr. Cynicism.
Does that mean I'm God?
No. But so my buddy is Mr. Cynicism out here when it comes to politics. Okay. And he said, and I told him all about this, and he said this interview and us following this issue, and he says, why are these legislators grandstanding about college sports? Why are they bothering with college sports instead of really doing their jobs? And so your rebuttal, what is your answer to those of us, and unfortunately there are a lot of us who are pretty, I guess, cynical about politics these days. What's your answer to those who are cynical about the Florida legislature tackling this issue?
Well, listen, at the end of the day, we're public servants. And when you speak of public servant, you have to understand that the word public servant is premised upon the word service. And the word service does not mean that you have to get paid or earn some sort of political stripes in order to do what you need to do. The only requirement to be a public servant is to have service and to have the mindset to deliver service and to protect those who simply need to. And this is not about grandstanding. This is about this is about us, the NCAA, and saying you promised us years ago that you would deal with this issue. You promised us that you would protect those children and those families who simply believed in you when you told them that you would make this right. So when we come to the table, we're coming to the table not to grandstand, but we're coming to the table to say either you're going to get it right now, or we're going to use the powers that the 20 million people of the state of Florida have granted us, the power to represent them in the state capitol that has 67 counties in the entire state, representing over 20 million. And we simply stand in the gap and say we're going to represent these people because they've chosen us to represent them, and this is what they're calling for. They're calling for change, and we have the pen, we have the ink, we have the paper, and we're prepared to use it on behalf of 20 million people in the state of Florida. We're talking about over 460,000 athletes, right? And we're talking about in tune billions of dollars. So if we don't stand up for them against organizations such as the NCAA, then whom?
So what's the next step with this bill? Where is it now, and where does this whole process go from here?
Well, we have two steps. Number one, we have committee, and number two, we have session. But I am a man of realistic hopes and dreams, and I appreciate the system. I believe something is going to happen. I believe the state of Florida is not going to sit by while the free market is being tampered with and shunned away at these young student athletes. I don't believe anyone who understands the importance of having property rights, because your name is technically, it is your property. Your image is your property, and your likeness is your property. I do not believe there are people out there who would say no to someone using his or her property rights to protect and enhance its family's ability to participate in the American dream. And that is simply having a right to earn a living when that name and that image and likeness are being used.
Well, it's already been referred to, I believe, like you said, two committees, Commerce and Education and the Higher Education Career Readiness Subcommittee. We'll be following this, both HB 251 and HB 287 as they move through the process. And like you said, July 1st, 2020, I'm looking at my watch and I already can't believe we're already in October of 2019. So this is going to happen. This is going to happen real quick, one way or the other. So, and we'll be following it very closely. Leader McGhee, before I let you go, just let us know if our listeners would like to follow you and the process of this legislation. How can they do so?
Oh, you can follow me on social media, Kionne McGhee on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. Man, they have so many different platforms out there, but just type in Kionne McGhee, and I'm the only one. It'll come up, and we're going to make it do what it do.
All the best with this legislation, and I do hope that you'll stay in touch, and we'll be following it as it rolls along. Thank you so much for your time.
Thanks again to Representative Kionne McGhee helping us out with that. And by the way, earlier today, we're recording this on Thursday. Earlier today, Governor Ron DeSantis came out endorsing a bill that would do exactly what we're talking about: open up the ability for collegiate athletes to make money off their name and likeness outside of team activities. Now, exactly which bill makes it through the House and through the Senate and gets signed by Governor DeSantis, assuming that happens, we don't know, but we'll be following that. And I want to special thanks to a couple of people, Jackson Peel with Leader McGee's office for helping us out, and also, of course, Chaz Short. Make sure you follow him at CFB*. Chaz, can't thank you enough for your help on this and in getting rounding up some amazing interviews in some of our more recent shows. So this is an interesting thing. And again, the big thing here is the fact that this bill, should whichever one passes, it's set to open up the floodgates on July 1st of 2020. Whereas the California bill, which was signed into law by Gavin Newsom, their governor, was set for 2023. So Florida is pushing this thing into overdrive upcoming. So the NCAA might have some really big decisions to make in terms of, and we might see a pretty drawn-out legal fight. I don't know. But there's a lot to, but nonetheless, you still have to follow how the negotiations go and what bill actually comes out after they go through committee and then are sent to the House and then are sent to the Senate for a vote. So stick around and we'll be following that issue as well. All right. We'll be right back in a little bit. We're going to take a look at what's the latest with soccer and volleyball and a big win for UCF men's golf this week. We'll be right back. This is the Black and Gold Banneret Podcast. We're back after this. Welcome back to the Black and Gold Banneret Podcast. Jeff Sharon, Eric Lopez, Brian Murphy with you here as we wrap up things going on as we get ready to head to the weekend. Of course, thanks again to all of you listening in a day later than we normally get it up, but we're going to try and catch up on the Olympic sports real quick. First off, men's golf at the Tavistock Collegiate Invitational at Isleworth. This is the big Isleworth tournament. It's the fall is still kind of a feeling out period for the golf teams, but UCF has gone to this tournament a bunch of times. They don't host it, but for the first time ever, they won it, and boy, did they ever. 15-team field, 15 of the best teams in the country, and UCF as a team finished 20 under par and won the tournament by 14 total strokes. 10 of the 15 teams in the tournament are in the top 50, and the Knights are number 16 in the country right now, according to golfstat.com. Not only did they win the team competition, Johnny Travail of UCF won the individual medalist competition with shooting 12 under par in 3 rounds, 6 under 66 in the final round, the third and final round, to win by 1 stroke over Trey Winstead of LSU. So some clutch work for UCF, a big win, and they have now won 2 of their 4 tournaments that they've entered into this year and haven't finished any worse than 5th in any one tournament. So this is a big win for men's golf, Eric Lopez, wasn't it?
You know, it's big when your golf tops the 3 stars list that's on our Black Gold Banneret.com. It's coming out Friday from last week. That's how big it is. It's good times being had. It's a great week of golf. Tiger Woods competing in Japan in the PGA Tour. UCF winning Tavistock. We're the golf capital of the world in Central Florida. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, and this is looking to be a big year for Bryce Waller and the guys. So, speaking of big years, men's soccer continues their role. They played their 4th consecutive overtime game at UConn, and they got another victory, and it was another golden goal for your guy, Eric, Gino Vivi. He did it again, 2-1 UCF, getting the victory at UConn, and the Knights are 3-0-1 in their last 4 games, all of them going to overtime. And it was a big win for UCF, their 300th all-time. But more importantly, Eric, the Knights got some help in the league race because Memphis beat SMU 4-3 in overtime. And right now, the Knights, say it out loud, they are in first place in the American all by their lonesome.
Significant because, we were talking last week about who would blink first and things like that. Well, SMU blinked first, losing to Memphis, and UCF took advantage with the win in Connecticut. They got to go to South Florida Saturday night, big game, 7 o'clock, to try to maintain that lead and set up a showdown. Memphis is in second right there in the mix as well. UCF last home match will be November 1st against Memphis. That's looming big right now.
Yeah.
A lot on the line. We're going to try to get Travis Clark, actually, of Top Drawer Soccer on a future episode here, maybe as soon as next week, because they have begun. I was talking to him because they've done their projections, and UCF's in a great opportunity here, Jeff, where they literally, after Cincinnati, the last regular season match, which I believe is, I forget
November
the date
5th.
right now. Thank you. If they were to win the regular season title in the American, there's a very good chance after that match at Cincinnati, that would be the last time UCF gets on a plane until potentially the College Cup in December in Cary, North Carolina, because they've got a shot to be a high enough seed come the NCAA tournament if they take care of business to where they would host throughout the NCAA tournament. I hope to get Travis on to discuss that in perhaps next week's episode, be exchanging emails. But that's how significant those results are, and that's why these next 3 matches are pivotal. And a really tricky one with South Florida. That's a big rivalry. South Florida's tough to beat in Tampa. So we'll see what happens there, but it's all in UCF's control right now.
Well, they're 9-1-2 overall, 3-0-1 in the American, number 8 in the United Soccer Coaches poll, and Top Drawer has them 6. Most importantly, I think, is the RPI. Now, they dropped a spot by virtue of playing Connecticut. Connecticut's not having a very good year. But I imagine UCF is going to at least hold, maybe jump a spot over these last 4 games because they are playing 2 of them are against teams in the RPI top 50. Their next one is at South Florida on Saturday. Massive game at the Bulls. UCF then comes home for 2. They play Stetson on the 29th, and before you scoff at Stetson, they're tied for first in the Atlantic Sun right now.
They could win the A-Sun tournament.
Yeah, they're pretty good. Even their RPI's at 104, which is high for an A-Sun team. Then there's that November 1st game at home against Memphis. Memphis's RPI is 23, and then the Knights finish at Cincinnati, who's kind of struggling. RPI of number 102, but you can't sleep on the road, and especially it's going to be cold up there too for that game. So with 4 games left before the tournament, UCF really does control its own destiny. And wow, like I said, this is starting to get. You're going to have to start paying attention if you haven't done it now, because this team is getting some work done. Women's soccer, on the other hand, they have hit. I don't know what's going on over here, but their last 2 games have not been the results that I know that we all know that they've wanted. They're 8-2-4 right now, 3-1-2 in the American, but those 2 draws have happened in the last 2 games against Temple and UConn. Neither of those teams particularly good. At least Temple's RPI is in the 200s. UConn is in the 100s. But this felt, Eric, like a real missed opportunity for UCF women's soccer, because their RPI dropped from 67 all the way down to 90 by virtue of those 2 scoreless draws. So right now, with 3 games left in the season, at ECU, at Cincinnati, and then home for South Florida, the only game that has any real RPI significance for them is that South Florida game on the last day of the season. And it looks like if they're going to get into the NCAA tournament right now, if you're going by RPI, they're going to have to win the American Athletic Conference tournament outright.
More than likely, they're going to have to get their win the tournament, and probably the best way to do it is try to get at least that 2nd seed, so you don't have to play an extra match. That's a possibility. Now, I do have good news, since we'll spoil this, Murph. We're going to spoil this for Jeff. On Thursday night, UCF did finally they got the win at ECU, 1-0. Kristen Scott with a goal in the 57th minute, breaking a long drought. They were talking about 270-some minutes without a goal. And, I was there for the 2 home draws. You could tell they were pressing a little bit offensively. They dominated both matches. They just couldn't put it behind the net. And after a while, and Murph, we've talked about this with baseball, and I think soccer is just as much of a mental game as baseball, and a hitter who, could be hitting 350 the whole year, and all of a sudden, goes a couple games without a hit, and now they get into a slump and they lose confidence that quickly. And it's the same thing with soccer players, Murph, in sports. You can lose confidence a lot quicker than gaining it.
Yeah, I guess so. I just don't see that so much in soccer, because every match is, one play can decide any match. Whereas baseball, there's a series of plays. If it's an offensive score fest, then you got to keep up. But really, you go into every match going, only needs really like 1 goal in scoreless ties to get us back on the right track. And so it is a little more, befuddling that this is happening to this team at this time. Because, it's not like they should be down on themselves. These are scoreless ties. Only one.
But when you have so many opportunities at the net and keep either missing wide, you hit the post, which is kind of what happened in the Temple match, where Temple was playing back, basically conceding shots, and you can't get it through the net, it gets frustrating. And it's almost – I compare the Temple match a little bit. Jeff, you might like this comparison. You're a New Jersey Devils fan.
Mm-hmm.
Remember when the old mid-'90s, they used to play the trap, and everybody hated it?
The neutral zone trap. Yep.
And why? And explain to the audience, because I'm not a hockey guru like you are. Explain why that offenses hated that and a lot playing that against the trap.
Well, what they did was the way it ended up was that they just couldn't get the puck up the ice, and the way you would work it is just kind of trap the puck with your defensemen, kind of move them up a little bit. And then you would also use your forwards kind of in a defensive posture. And when that happens, obviously the whole idea is to try and cause some kind of a turnover and get possession. But what you're really doing is just frustrating the offense completely. And coaches and fans, they ended up basically adjusting the rules, and that was part of the reason why they got rid of the red line, was to try and get, in hockey at least, was to try and get rid of that neutral zone trap. And since then the Devils haven't won a Stanley Cup since 2003. So So that'll do it, you know. But yeah, that's kind of an example. It doesn't make for a very exciting game. That's the most important thing on it.
And so Temple has a similar philosophy where they play defensively back. They don't allow you to get a clean shot. Like the reference that was used by Bridget Callahan on the broadcast was park the bus. They're going to play all their bodies back.
That's a good one.
That's what they use. And they're not going to let you get a clear shot. And you can take all the shots you want, but it's not going to be a clean shot. And we're going to frustrate you with that. And unfortunately, UCF couldn't break through on those two home matches, but they did against East Carolina. How about this? UCF this year, on the road now, 6-0-1 on the road, whereas at home, 3-2-3.
That I can't get that. That is bizarre. It's so strange. But nonetheless, I mean, like you said, well, they got the win over ECU, so now with 2 games to go against third place Cincinnati on the road, but Cincinnati's RPI number 145, and then obviously Halloween night against South Florida, RPI number 29. So. We're going to have to monitor how that goes. Of course, South Florida has been the bugaboo for UCF the last few years. Beat them in the championship game in PKs a couple years ago at UCF. Forced them into a draw. UCF's lost some heartbreakers to the Bulls over the time. So it's going to be so can UCF return the favor on Halloween night? We'll have to see as the Knights get ready for it. 4 draws, by the way. That's a lot in the regular season. I don't even know the last time they had that many. I'll have to look it up. But all right, volleyball. I want to move on to this. The road trip they just went on is the toughest road trip in the American. At Wichita State, at Tulsa. Tough because, not because so much of the teams, although Wichita State is traditionally good, but tough because that's a long way to be traveling out there. And UCF, lo and behold, wins both matches. They beat Wichita in 4, and then they went and then they beat Tulsa in 3. McKenna Melville had double-digit kills in both games. And how about Allie Sable, who has filled in admirably in the absence of Catherine Westlich, and had double-figure kills against Wichita State. And Lachey Harper, who had 10 block assists and 10 digs. She's just been playing so well this year. It's great to see Lachey. She's been, she's finally totally healthy, and she looks like it. And she made the honor roll for the conference this year. And UCF Volleyball right now is 7-1 in the American, tied for first in the East Division with Cincinnati, who Cincinnati does have a match in hand, but these two teams will play again one more time. And the Knights, most importantly, are still in the RPI top 40. They moved down 5 spots, but they are at number 34 right now in the RPI. So that is something to keep an eye on as UCF Volleyball heads into this home stretch. 5 of their last 8 are at home, by the way, as we head down this stretch, including this weekend against Houston on Friday and Tulane on Sunday. And by the way, after that, War on I-4 time, Eric and Brian, on Friday, and you want to be there for that because November the 1st, that is alumni weekend for UCF Volleyball, so we're going to see a lot of old friends there as well. It should be a fun weekend coming up. Next 3 matches at home: Houston, Tulane, and South Florida. It's going to be big. And then, by the way, the Knights' second shot against Cincinnati occurs November the 10th on a Sunday. That's the home regular season finale and senior night. So that should be a big one as well. All right, so we caught you all up on everything going on. Make sure you check out the Nightcap, where we give you the latest on all the Olympic sports going on UCF. And, of course, Eric's 3 stars as well, where we tout the 3 best performances of the week from UCF's Olympic sports. And with that, we go to Brian Murphy and figure out what's on tap for him this week. Are you flying up to Philly, Murph?
So as of recording this, my flight leaves in about 7 hours.
Oh, fantastic!
So yeah.
So you need to go. You need to get to sleep.
Well, I haven't even packed, so I'll be up all night.
Oh,
yeah, but no, I'll be up in Philly tomorrow morning, basically. Well, Friday morning, and then we'll see what happens. In the meantime, I do have to send in my answers for the round table that's put together by Jeremy Brenner. I need to do that tonight because I know that's going to be posted on Friday. And then I will also be posting my UCF checklist or whatever you call it against Temple, things to look out for in this game against the Owls. And then I will be live from the link on Saturday night.
All right. And let's see, what else do we have going on from you there, Mr. Lopez?
I will be on that aforementioned round table. I already sent mine in, so
That's what I heard. That's what I heard. So I figured I better hurry up.
I beat you to the rush there. So we have that, the 3 stars. We mentioned one of them on this episode. We'll find out who the others are. That'll also be published, I would assume, Friday, on blackandgoldbanneret.com. So we're going to cover that. And then, like I said, we're going to see how it goes. The big UCF Temple game, it's really going to decide a lot of things. So we'll see how that goes. And then men's soccer, we're going to keep track of that. They're going to be in Tampa against USF. So we're going to monitor all that situation. We're going to try to get you ready for the postseasons and the Olympic sports and the football side of things. And Murph, by the way, real quick, baseball at Auburn, February 21st through the 23rd. Auburn announced their baseball schedule.
That's a big one right there for Greg Lovelady, right? Big road series.
Yeah, well, it's part of like the home and home. Remember, Auburn was in here. Was it last year or the year before? I'm forgetting.
Last year they were here, played a wild 3-game series. Yeah,
that's right. They had Will Holland, who at the point, Will Holland, the shortstop from Auburn, was seen as like a top 10 draft pick. I believe he fell into like the 3rd round this year. Did not have a good year at the plate. Looked like a small Chris Bryant to me, but that obviously is not good. That's why I'm not an MLB scout. But now I'm just getting too deep into the weeds. Let's not talk about who San Diego hired as their manager today.
Oh, Jeffrey, it was fantastic.
No.
So the Padres hired this guy named Jace Tingler, who apparently was on the Rangers staff. I'd never heard of him.
He was a bench coach.
So this news breaks around 10:25, 10:30 in the morning as Murph's picking me up to go to media day. Mm-hmm. Murph's been hyping this Padres job for like how many months? Like the last couple of months.
You were throwing out Madden going to the Padres.
Right.
That's what you thought he was.
No, anybody who's anybody should want that job.
Well, are you saying that because it's in San Diego, or are you saying that because it's the Padres?
No. Like, that farm system is loaded. That front office has shown that they will pay for things, even if it's unwisely to pay for things. And they've got some talent now that's ready to play, obviously, with Manny Machado and Fernando Tatis Jr. And then they hire a Rangers bench coach who really is going to come out of the blue. And I know people are like, well, he's well respected, yada, yada, yada. What are you doing? No, you need
Jeffrey. Within 5 minutes of me telling him about the hire, he basically fired Tingler already.
Wow.
You needed like a Buck Showalter or Ron Washington, someone who could go in there, knows how to win, to sort of set the culture, and then when the team is good enough to compete, that's when you fire that guy and bring in your analytical guy who can put everything together. But you need someone to set your culture. You don't have any of that. You need someone who knows how to win. You don't have that. You have Chase Tingler. What? Get out of here. Oh man, he's gonna be fired so quickly.
I just like the name Jace Tingler. I don't know what it is.
Everybody loves it. I'm sure all the scribes down at the Union Tribune are loving it. I give them a lot of credit, but it's not. That's just a bad move.
I feel better now. I feel like that's been building for like 12 hours since the hire. Like, that's been building for you. I feel like you finally released it. I feel like you'll feel better.
Here's why I can do that now. Literally, this podcast has been going on for more than an hour and a half once we put in the audio clips. So I figured that all the audience is tuned out, and I'm gonna go rant on the Padres at this point.
So to prevent you from doing that, by the way, ladies and gentlemen, please check out Derek Warden's latest photo gallery from the ECU game. It is phenomenal. He's just, it's so fantastic. The stuff that Derek has been doing here on for us on this photography, I am eternally grateful for the work he's been doing, because he's just been absolutely fantastic. Check it out at blackandgoldbanneret.com. We are SB Nation's home for UCF Athletics. You can follow us on Twitter at UCF_Banneret, Facebook.com/Black and Gold Banneret as well. And of course, blackandgoldbanneret.com. Follow us each individually at Jeff_Sharon, Eric Lopez Elo, and Spokes_Murphy. Gentlemen, thank you once again. Appreciate you. Murph, safe flight up to Philly. And don't forget, also, we'll try and wrangle up the troops for a night shift after the Temple game on Saturday as well. I'm sorry we didn't get around to it this time, but nobody was available, and it would have been just me. But
that's what happens when there's night games. Night games
I know.
We can announce that the next home game for UCF football is a noon kickoff. The Space Game's a noon kickoff.
Yes.
That makes nobody happy but us, but I am thrilled.
You know what I'm thrilled about? I'm thrilled about, first of all, those uniforms that came out this week. Oh my God, they're amazing. And the return of the Citronaut, baby. I got my Citronaut shirt and hat.
Good for you.
Canaveral blue, brother. It's happening right now. I'm so proud. I'm so happy. I can't wait to wear that thing every day. So, as we wrap up here on the Black and Gold Banneret Podcast, for Eric Lopez and Brian Murphy, I'm Jeff Sharon saying thank you so much for listening, and we will catch you on night shift on Saturday night after the Temple game. Catch you later.